Hello, my name is Amanda, and for this group presentation, I will talk about oral and nonverbal communication in South Africa. Before we start, I would like to do a little introduction. When addressing communication, especially in South Africa, several of its characteristics will be intertwined with social power relations of race, class, and gender. Historic facts like English colonization and the apartheid impacted language, body expressions, and other contexts of social relationships. As a consequence, it is possible to identify particular or similar aspects related to diverse racial and ethnic groups, like the white and black population. However, due to the complexity mentioned above, and also the continued changes, a generalized analysis will not represent all individuals. Let's start with oral communication. In order to understand that aspect, let's briefly talk about the languages spoken in South Africa, which we know is a diverse country with several subcultures. A great example of its subcultures is the fact that it has 11 official languages. Here is an estimate of the languages that are spoken the most. As we can see, the majority of the population speaks Zulu, and the fourth most spoken language is English. As we have learned from our previous presentation made by George Damalas, in terms of race and ethnicity, Black Africans are the majority. They are close to 80% of the population. Colored and white people are close to 9% each. Indian and Asian populations are 2.5%. Many South Africans speak several official languages and English. It happens because of the contact with internal subcultures, either through traveling or living in different places. The English colonization also plays an important influence in communication in South Africa. In cities like Cape Town and Johannesburg, the white culture will also determine what languages people will speak. The white colonization also impacted other strong elements of oral communication, like the meaning of the words. White South Africans value the exact meaning of each word. They consider this characteristic as a sign of independence. For example, the word no carries a meaning related to hierarchy and respect. Because of the white supremacy started since the colonization, black South Africans were segregated and would avoid saying no to their boss or to elders. Another linguistic contradiction is that the word yes can mean that the person heard and understood the request, but it doesn't exactly mean that they agree with it. Due to the country's subcultures and its complexities, and also to several changes after the apartheid, the characteristics mentioned before are not a norm for the whole population. It remains stronger between domestic workers and rural areas. A popular South African English expression considered a combination of black and white cultures is "Ja well no fine." It has an ambivalent and ironic interpretation, and it can mean yes, no, or maybe. As we can see, in South Africa, people could use a more direct or indirect speech. The proverb "say what you mean and mean what you say" exemplifies well the white South African oral communication styles, which is similar to the one used in the United States. White South Africans prefer go straight to the point and focus on business concerns during meetings and negotiations. On the other hand, black South Africans could tell a story based on indirect communication style, using illustrations and metaphors as a form to express their needs. Indirect speech is also a way to avoid offenses and to respect hierarchy. That communication style shows that black South Africans have a high power distance and white South Africans have a low power distance. White South Africans could not feel comfortable if a counterpart does not take long before starting to ask personal questions. On the contrary, Black South Africans could be offended if a counterpart does not ask questions about personal topics like family and health. Black South Africans can understand that behavior as a lack of interest and as an indication that they can't trust a person who seems not to care about them as individuals. For Black South Africans, it is not invasive going into this realm. It is just a way to be friendly and to create a comfortable and trustful environment. Jokes are also common, but they should be avoided until you know the person better. It is common to talk about sports and soccer, which is their most popular one. But be careful because South Africans are usually very passionate about their teams. It is crucial to remember that generally South Africans are sympathetic and are part of a relationship oriented culture. Differently than task oriented cultures like the American, small talk would not be considered a waste of time. Now we'll talk about nonverbal communication. Taking into consideration the racial and ethnic oppression caused by the apartheid, it is easy to understand why nonverbal communication is stronger on Black South Africans. Unable to express their thoughts and needs through words, the Black population had to learn how to communicate implicitly. The apartheid is over, but the aspect is still reflected in the culture, and it basically means that people would have higher expectations that their body language will be understood by others. Here is the African handshake. It uses a free hand slipping on the other person's thumb, which is mostly used by Black South Africans. It carries a message of friendly and caring approach. Here we see Jacob Zuma, President of South Africa, using this handshake when greeting Barack Obama. In those pictures, it didn't seem like the gesture was reciprocated, but this would have been appreciated. There are meaningful messages being expressed in what's not being said. There is an indirect description. That approach could cause impatience in business negotiations when people can be anxious to address an issue. As mentioned previously, Black South Africans can use the word yes while actually meaning no. That is explained by the negative meaning embedded in the body language. That's when the avoidance of disagreement and respect to the authority are communicated by nonverbal indications. A Zulu proverb says that quarrels end, but words once spoken never die. That is an example of how Black South Africans value nonverbal communication. Eye contact is an interesting example of nonverbal communication in South Africa. It is advised to keep eye contact while greeting or talking to a person and to demonstrate that you are interested in the conversation. However, it is common to see people rolling their eyes while talking. It's not a lack of respect, but a cultural reflection of the intimidation experienced by the Black population. In the past, Black South Africans learned that they should not look for the truth. Looking at a white person in the eye could also be interpreted as an attempt to challenge. A business manager could now think that an employee who avoids eye contact is hiding something. However, leaders would benefit from understanding that this behavior was taught to many South Africans from early ages. In remote areas, it is specifically not polite to look in the eyes of elders while talk to them. In general, the American and the South African cultures are similar regarding gestures and body contact while doing business. In South Africa, touching the person is not common, but backslapping is an exception. The arm length would be the most acceptable distance while having a conversation. The tone of voice is moderate, and interrupting a counterpart can not only be considered unprofessional, but can also be seen as an insult. South African people are not likely to express emotions in public, especially between men and women, but men holding hands is a sign of friendship. For the most traditional South Africans, especially from rural areas, it's not polite for young individuals to stand in the middle of a room surrounded by elders. Different than many Western cultures, younger people should find a seat before starting a conversation. Another interesting detail is the use of the hands while holding objects. It's not polite to grab an object with the left hand because it can be considered disrespectful. Thanks for watching. Next, my classmate Begum will continue with that presentation. She will talk about written communication. Bye!